Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. Storytelling has always been an integral component in the cultures of many Native American nations. Compelling tales of the seen and unseen aspects of the world, of gods, spirits, heroes, and especially of the monsters that lurk in the great unknown. The monsters of Native American legends are truly unlike any other in mythology. Bizarre abominations, straight out of one's deepest sepulchre nightmares. Savage beasts lurking in the woods and the deep waters. Cursed people warped and twisted into cannibalistic demons. And frightening creatures that are rooted in the very elements of the natural world. This program will discuss a handful of the most famous, most unusual, and most frightening monsters of Native American folklore. We begin our program with one of the most widespread and most evil of Native American monsters, the horned serpents. As their name would imply, these monsters were depicted as gigantic snakes with one or more horns atop their heads, with wide gaping mouths, sometimes large enough to swallow an entire valley. Appearing in the legends of southeastern woodlands and Great Lakes regions, the horned serpents are referred to by a host of different regional names, and were said to possess various different magical powers, often associated with fresh water where they made their homes. Though its appearance, name, and powers may change from tale to tale, one aspect of the horned serpent that is universal is its hatred for humanity, appearing almost always as an enemy of the people, of order, and of the gods. Such acts of malice include devouring people and animals to the point of surplus killing, stealing water from entire ecosystems, and even flooding the whole of the earth in order to spite a single enemy. In many ways, the horned serpents were the equivalent to fierce dragons, massive reptilian monsters with voracious appetites, whose very presence was a bad omen that brought about misfortune, suffering, and death, and perpetual opponents to gods, spirits, and the bravest of heroes. With their immense size, unpredictable ferocity, and control over water, the horned serpents embodied the most dangerous aspects of nature. But there are creatures of legend that made even the horned serpents quiver with fear. Enter the thunderbirds, perhaps the most powerful and most awe-inspiring creatures of Native American folklore. Appearing in stories and artwork from many peoples indigenous to the Pacific Northwest, as well as peoples of the Southwest, East Coast, Great Lakes, and Great Plains regions, the thunderbird goes by many different names and takes on many different forms, most consistently as a massive bird of prey, usually an eagle, so large that it could snatch a full-grown whale from the ocean with its talons, as easily as an eagle snatches a fish from the lake. Thunder would sound as it flapped its mighty wings, and lightning flashed from its eyes. Due to the vast distribution of its legend, the thunderbird has taken on a number of different roles throughout mythology, sometimes as a benevolent entity, blessing the people and protecting humanity from dangerous spirits. Sometimes as incredibly dangerous, even hostile towards mortals in its path. And sometimes neither inherently good or bad, rather just a part of nature itself. Regardless of how it is portrayed, the thunderbird is universally revered as a powerful being, a god of thunder and storms, inciting both honor and fear. Indigenous peoples of the frozen north tell of the Kalupalik, one of several boogeymen from Inuit mythology, and arguably the most unnerving. In appearance, the Kalupalik were aquatic humanoids, amphibious in nature, but unlike the beautiful mermaids of European lore, the Kalupalik were hideous to behold, with green slimy skin, long sharp nails, matted manes, and huge eyes adapted for living in the cold and dark waters of the Arctic Ocean. The Kalupalik were said to live along the coastlines, lurking beneath ice floes and luring children by emitting rhythmic knocking sounds and ethereal hums. When an unsuspecting child would come within reach, the monster would ambush them, snatch them up, and stuff them in their sealskin sack, and drag them to their underwater grotto. Some believe that the Kalupalik would kill and devour their captives, while others say that the children were put into a death-like sleep and then drained of their life force. The Ojibwe people of the Great Lakes region told stories of an undead figure said to perpetually roam the deep forests, never resting, and always on the hunt for human victims. An unstoppable killer known as Baycock. The Baycock was described as resembling a tall, emaciated man with translucent skin stretched tightly over its bones, and black pits with glowing red points for eyes, said to paralyze or infect those who gaze into them. The origins of the Baycock are shrouded in mystery. Some say that it may have once been a hunter who lost his quarry in the woods before finding himself hopelessly lost, cursing the gods and swearing that his spirit would never leave his remains. Others say that the gods punished him for coveting his brother's wife and banned him from entering the spirit realm, leaving him no choice but to return to his decaying body. Whatever its true origin, the Baycock was said to have enhanced strength, speed, and agility, coupled with never-ending endurance and sharp senses, making it an adept hunter. The Baycock does not hunt animals, instead stalking and killing only humans, but not just any human, specifically targeting hunters and warriors, though the Baycock would not hesitate to prey upon a person armed with a bow or a rifle, whether they be a hunter, a warrior, or just a recreationist. The monster's weapon of choice was a bow that would fire invisible arrows, tipped with a dreamless, sleep-inducing toxin, but may also attack with a heavy war club. When the victim would lose consciousness, the Baycock would slice open the victim's abdomen, reaching its bony hand into the cavity and consuming the liver. After dining, the Baycock would place a rock into the empty cavity and magically seal the wound shut. The delirious victim would wake up the next morning with no recollection of the encounter, before turning violently ill and dying a grisly death. Survival against a Baycock is difficult, as it had no known weaknesses, being immune to the elements and most weapon attacks such as bullets, arrows, or blades. However, it should be noted that a Baycock is forever chained to the forests of the Great Lakes, and would never venture into a home, an urban area, or other civilized domain, even to pursue its quarry. Deep within Lake Okanagan in British Columbia, Canada, is said to lurk Ogopogo. Ogopogo's legend is spread throughout the stories of various First Nations people who lived in the area, calling it various different names and describing it as a large serpent, measuring up to 50 feet in length and as thick as a tree trunk, dark in color with smooth eel-like skin, and a pair of horns upon its head. Despite its great size, Ogopogo was capable of moving at great speeds, undulating vertically in a series of humps, and using its powerful tail as a rudder. Some say that Ogopogo was a peaceful creature, a benevolent spirit that would protect the lake and all the creatures that live in and around it. Others say that it was a volatile beast, quick to attack any person or capsize any boat that it saw, even littering an island within the lake with the bones of its victims. While others believe that the Ogopogo was a case of mistaken identity of sturgeons or groups of otters swimming together. Whatever the truth may be, the popularity of Ogopogo's legend has been incredibly strong, acting as a major source of tourism in the area, with hundreds of alleged sightings having been reported over the years. Every culture on the planet tells a story of a giant, and that giant could be either quite benevolent or pure evil. The Quinnipiac people of southern Connecticut tell of a stone giant who was good at the beginning of the story, and quite evil by the end. A giant named Hobbomock. Thousands of years ago, Hobbomock taught the living creatures of the world to speak the same language, believing that the path to world peace was through communication. When his task was done, he had set off to teach others his ways, but when he had returned some generations later, he found that his teachings had been discarded. Animals made various barks, grunts, and chirps. Humans spoke various different languages, while plants remained silent. When Hobbomock saw this, his heart was broken, and that heartbreak turned into blind rage and hatred, and the giant proceeded to tear into the earth, ripping up trees and killing any living creature that stood in his path. Terrified and left with no alternative, the people sought the aid of the great spirit Ketan, who cast a sleeping spell upon the oysters that Hobbomock enjoyed eating. As soon as he had finished eating, Ketan's spell took hold, and the giant felt his body drain. His eyes grew heavy and his limbs began to slow. The giant mustered his strength, stood and made his way from the sound and into the forest, but he had only managed a few steps before he at last collapsed, falling fast asleep. Ketan's spell had worked. Hobbomock's rampage came to an end, and as time would go on, forests would grow upon Hobbomock's stone skin as he slept. To this very day, Hobbomock remains sound asleep, his massive body forming the mountain range seen today in Hamden, Connecticut, and what is aptly named Sleeping Giant State Park. But it is said that one day the spell would break, and Hobbomock would awaken once again. Just as giants are found in every culture's mythology, so too are there stories of little folk, creatures such as fairies, elves, and goblins, and in the case of Mohican, Abenaki, and Wampanoag mythology, they are called the Pukwudgies. With a name that means person of the wilderness, the Pukwudgie is described as no higher than a person's knee in height, resembling a goblin-like humanoid with a thick coat of quills akin to a porcupine. Like other little folk of myth, Pukwudgies are said to have magical powers that vary from culture to culture, but may include the ability to turn invisible, confuse people or make them forget things, shapeshift into dangerous animals, or bring harm to people by staring at them. And like other little folk, they may be helpful and kind to human beings, helping them with chores and struggles of daily life, while other times they may be quite mischievous, stealing children or committing acts of sabotage. While the pranks of a Pukwudgie are normally harmless, it is said that if one were to insult them, they could be quite dangerous. Though as mischievous as a Pukwudgie could be, it should be noted that they are rarely ever depicted as pure evil, unlike certain other monsters of Native American folklore. The Navajo, or Diné people, hold legends of beings so evil and so feared that even the bravest are hesitant to say their name: skinwalkers. referred to as Yi Nadloshi, which translates to "with it he goes on all fours." Skinwalkers are a perversion of all things held sacred by the Navajo Nation. They are witches who would abuse their spiritual teachings for evil personal gain. There are a few details on how one would become a skinwalker, most likely as a means to stop evil from growing. Some say it was done by a secret ceremony, a dark ritual, or a Faustian bargain with an evil spirit or a demon. Whatever the method may be, the individual was said to acquire supernatural powers, most notably the ability to shapeshift into animals, done so by adorning themselves in the pelts and body parts such as claws, bones, or feathers of the animal in question. Other powers of the skinwalker include control over nocturnal animals, summoning the spirits of the dead, necromancy, uncanny athletic prowess, and perhaps most frightening, the ability to take possession of any person who locks eyes with them. Once in control, the monster could make their victims say or do anything that they wish, even things that the victim ordinarily would never do. In recent years, the skinwalker has garnered a sort of popularity among non-natives, frequently appearing in horror fiction and stories of paranormal encounters in the southwestern United States. But the skinwalker's portrayal in these stories bear little resemblance to their original counterparts, owing to a lack of cultural context and understanding of the original lore. In fact, many Navajo people are reluctant to discuss skinwalkers with anyone, whether they are a part of the nation or an outsider, stemming from general distrust of sharing sacred knowledge, but also out of fear of repercussions from skinwalkers. To not speak of the evil ones, or to not seek them out in any way, acts as a form of defense against them. Some, however, are somewhat more willing to speak of them, albeit sparingly, perhaps in order to quell the curious thrill-seekers, or perhaps as a way to defend against the skinwalker by way of knowing thy enemy. Our final monster of this program is perhaps the most infamous in all of Native American lore, the Wendigo. Hailing from legends of the Anishinaabe people, the Wendigo was a malevolent, cannibalistic supernatural being, often depicted as a human who had been transformed into a monster that was gaunt to the point of emaciation, like a skeleton recently disinterred from the grave with its ash-gray flesh pulled tight over its bones, teeth ground sharp, and digits ending in sharp claw-like points. How a person would become a Wendigo varied from region to region, with some methods including committing acts of immense greed or selfishness, performing forbidden rituals, dreaming of the Wendigo, being bitten by a Wendigo, and surviving, or most commonly, through an act of cannibalism. Regardless of how one becomes a Wendigo, the affected person would be condemned to a cursed life in the forest, endlessly searching for human prey. The Wendigo had uncanny strength despite its emaciated frame, and preternatural speed that belied its great height, and with its enhanced senses of sight, hearing, and smell, paired with boundless stamina, the Wendigo was an unparalleled hunter. The older the Wendigo was, the more powerful it would become, with some stories even saying that the monster had the power to control animals and command the cold, causing blizzards or freezing victims with their touch. The creature's powers and appetite made it a formidable opponent, and some say that once it chose a victim, their prey's likelihood of escape was nigh impossible. Even those who are said to have escaped the grasp of the Wendigo are left in a catatonic state or driven to absolute madness. Stories of Native American folklore are full of some of the most terrifying monsters ever conceived by the human mind. Stone giants, water demons, undead cannibals, and more are all present. Some embody the worst and scariest aspects of nature, while others embody the worst and scariest aspects of humanity, while others seem to have been created to frighten children into behaving. From the mystical thunderbird, to the mischievous Pukwudgies, to the grim and slimy Kalupalik, to the cold and nightmarish Wendigo. The monsters of Native American folklore have garnered a reputation for being among the most frightening in oral storytelling, and have gone on to inspire both fear and imagination in the hearts of countless for many generations, and will continue to do so for many generations to come.